You're listening to the Food and Fitness podcast Huddle. In today's mini episode, we are going to reflect on last week's episode and talk about change. We are your hosts, Jess White,
Jackie Vandertuin,
and Dave Marshall.
Change happens whether it's sought or imposed. In this episode, we are going to dive into how each of us handle change. To get started, Dave, I'm going to pass it over to you. How do you handle change?
Sometimes not that well. Sometimes it's not that bad. I mean, when we talk with Tallon, I think we're our own worst enemies and can create some pretty intense outcomes in the end. One change that I always go to is my diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, because I was diagnosed at the age of 21. So that was kind of late, and it really does affect. But one thing that it was forced upon me, but I actually had the knowledge, because before I actually was diagnosed, I used to work at a camp for kids with type 1 diabetes. So I had an idea of how to manage everything, kind of what counting carbs was like, which can affect your blood sugar, injecting insulin, because we would teach kids how to do that. But the three non-diabetics on staff, we would sometimes just use a needle in and out and kind of do that. So it was a huge change. It was something that I was forced into. And if I didn't accept it, then that meant a lot of long-term complications. It was something I kind of rolled with. And because it changes with your age, and, it's different this week than it is last week, you kind of have to change on the fly. So a lot of times I get frustrated. And if my blood sugar is high, then I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm high. But then I also have to check back in myself and be like, okay, this is a short-term thing. We can fix it, and it's not going to be a long-term problem, because my goal is just to make sure that I have no long-term effects of type 1 diabetes. So no issues with my feet or nerves, no eye damage, anything like that. So kind of like what Tallon says is, I just got to win the day, and enough wins will get me pretty far. So I was able to actually take a lot from that and kind of pat myself on the back a little bit of how I felt when looking at change that way.
That's awesome. So basically you're okay with change. Sometimes change has to happen.
Yeah. I think I'm easier when it has to happen than if it might not have to happen. That's me. Because I mean, when you always look at it and you're like, well, I could do this or I could do that, I think that's where I struggle. But if it's something that's like, hey, listen, we're doing this and on we go, I can deal with that a lot better.
So it's just like what we kind of talked about with Tallon. You really have to have that strong why.
Yes.
To make things happen. What about you, Jackie? How do you handle change?
Well, I don't handle change very well at all. In fact, I tell my husband that I'm the Big Mac truck in the parking lot that takes a long time to turn around, because I'm kind of a planner and I like to plan things. I wake up in the morning and I've planned my day before I even get out of bed. And so because I've got everything planned, when I'm thrown a curveball, it doesn't fit with me anymore. And certainly 20 years ago, it wouldn't have gone well for me or my family. I really, I didn't do well with the whole change thing. That's the beauty of age, though, is now, and going back to Tallon when he's talking about to react, instead of reacting to things, kind of respond to things. I don't react as bad anymore, because, and maybe that's the beauty of age. You're like, is it really worth it to throw hissy fits anymore? I don't think so. So for me, there's some things that I'm like, yeah, whatever. And there's other things that I'm a little more married to. Because this is a food and fitness podcast, I wake up every morning and I know the days that I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to go for a walk, or the days that I'm going to take off. And when those days happen that I don't go for my exercise, because it means a lot to my whole mental health, I really get annoyed at the circumstances that have prevented me from doing it. again, the beauty of age is it's allowed me to respond differently. And wisdom gives you a whole bunch of nice little things to reflect on. And it's just not worth it anymore. It's not worth disrupting your family. It's not disrupting your marriage. It's just not worth it. And so you just kind of sit back and chill. However, and I always like to think positively, the pandemic, and I hate this word, pivot, we've been changing like constantly. Every day is a new change.
Mhm.
And I think that that's helped. So I don't know if it's my age or the fact that I don't even know how long this has been going on for. I struggle with the whole year concept. Over the last however many decades, it feels like we've been in this pandemic. I've really adapted to the, right and left turns, those sharp pivoting turns, because it's made me think, you know what, it's just not worth getting upset. The fact that I'm healthy and alive and all that stuff, it's not that big of a deal. And so again, going back to Tallon, it's changing the thought processes of how you react to things. So yeah. How about you, Jess?
This is such a hard question for me to answer because I'm listening to both of you guys speak and share your stories, and I'm kind of finding myself somewhat in the middle. When I first asked this question just a couple minutes ago, I kind of thought that I was okay with change. But Jackie, I think I'm more like you, where, and I'm not going to say that I am a pushover, but I go with the flow a lot. And I think I can adapt to change to quite a bit, but when it comes to certain things, I stand my ground, and I have to, it's not that I can't change, it's that I have to really plan and think about it. And sometimes I overthink about some things, but I really have to do my research and understand why the change has to happen in order to do it. So it's not that I'm against change at all. And I don't think I overreact to a change that needs to happen, or just a change in general, but I really have to understand why the change is happening to be able to figure out what direction to take. Kind of in the middle ground, I'd say. But anyways, until next time,
We'll talk food.
we'll talk fitness.
And we'll do it together.